Welcome back to the proverbial couch. Obviously, we're still in the pandemic scenario, so Al and I are on separate couches. We're also in.
Do I need to be on a couch? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
I'm on a chair, so that just throwing that out there.
I mean, he's seated. We're gonna have a comfortable conversation. So for those of you on that don't know, this is a collaboration podcast between Driftwood Athletics and the Athletes Wandering Couch. So my name is Anne. I'm a former higher level rugby player, CrossFit dabbler, Olympic weightlifter, all around just fitness junkie. And then this is my friend Al. I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, so I'm Al, short for Alnoor, also known as Flash. I used to be a provincially ranked tennis player, and like Anna, I found my way to CrossFit after university. Played at Simon Fraser, and yeah, just fell into CrossFit and loved it ever since, and loved the challenge, and haven't left the space since, and I don't think I ever will. In the space, I'm a certified CrossFit coach and a certified personal trainer, so I do that as well. And yeah, a huge passion of mine. So I have fallen in love with the space and have fully immersed myself, so to speak. I drank the Kool-Aid for sure.
I mean, we're currently drinking coffee right now. Al was one of the first people that I met when I started going to Studio 55. So I used to live in Vancouver, Canada. I'm not originally from there. And I had gone to a box out in Kitsilano before, actually. CrossFit Uncivilized. I don't know if they're called that anymore. They might have rebranded, but and then because Studio 55 was actually closer proximity wise to where I lived, I made the switch to go there. The very first coach that I ever met was Theron, affectionately known as our creeper coach. And then when I actually walked into class, Al was one of the first people that said hello to me and was kind of like, hey, welcome. And so for me, I've been around athletics for pretty much my entire life, so I'm used to being in gym spaces. But for you, have you seen an explosion of women that are starting to come and I guess feel more comfortable within this space?
Totally, and I think as someone who started the sport as to do it, and then obviously fell in love with it and became a coach and been coaching for a number of years now. And I think that the disparity, actually, what I'm noticing now is that there's actually more females in classes than males, and I think that the biggest thing for males entering some of the space is just how strong and how skilled females are in this space. And it's just it's a major eye-opener for a lot of males coming into the space, and it's just crap, I just got my ass kicked by someone half my size, and I'm gasping for air, or and there was nothing to Anne or to Katrina or to any some of these strong females that I get to work out with every single day, or I have worked out with. And it's so amazing to watch. It's so amazing to see, kind of you can see it in some of these guys that come into the gym and they work out, and they're it's not even close, and it's not even and it's not a competition, but it's just, you can see how shocked they are. And I just love that.
Yeah, and I think the explosion of seeing it on our digital media spaces,
Mm-hmm.
media, YouTube, just the explosion of the athletes in general, I think certainly helps take down some of those maybe misconceptions or preconceived notions of within strength sport.
Totally. And even just barriers, I think that with it being so accessible and visible due to social, I think that in my opinion, I think that what we're seeing is that I think it's making it more accessible for females. And I think that they're cool, I can do this, I can be in these spaces, and I don't need to feel scared or uncomfortable. And I hope, and it's just, I think that it's becoming more accessible because of it's becoming so prevalent in social, right? If you open your social, what do you see the most of? Food?
I mean, yes, it is
fitness.
It is tailored to sort of what your tastes are, but
For sure, but I just mean even in general, like you see so many people post about fitness, right? Like think about the percentage of people. I mean, obviously our pages are going to be
little bit.
saturated, but even in general, like my wife who's not into fitness, like she sees a ton of it. Like it's just that's what a lot of people love posting about, right? So I think it's great. It makes it more accessible and open, and that perception of I can't do this or this is not a space for me, I think is kind of diminishing.
Yeah, and I have to agree. I mean, there's a lot of folks that are, intimidated of coming into gym spaces, especially ones that are very a little bit more of a specialized gym space, like not a
Hmm.
general gym, if you will.
Hmm.
And there's always that sort of intimidation factor because all of us at one point or another in whatever we do, we're a beginner, right? You kind of start somewhere and then you sort of, if you fall in love with it or it brings you joy, it helps your health, physical and mental. You'll keep kind of chipping away at it, and naturally you do get better at it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think some of that, the intimidation factor is certainly diminished. What I have kind of seen over the last few years, and I talked to a couple of friends about this, and we were kind of of the mindset of like, I'm actually quite happy that in my adolescent years, sort of as an up and coming athlete, and just as a young female in general, that social media did not exist at the
Hmm.
um, because when I look at it now, just the hate comments, the misogyny is it's even not that it didn't exist before,
Hmm.
it's in your face so much more now. And I think that there's been a shift in sort of there was the bullying before if you weren't perceived as healthy, and
Hmm.
now there's bullying if you're perceived to be either too strong, too muscular, too masculine. And I'm sort of wondering, is that something that obviously we see it on a personal basis, but I suppose, like, what are your thoughts on sort of why the trend has sort of swung that way when we're making some of these spaces more accessible?
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? It's shocking to me. It's so funny. Like, and I see it, and even especially just being in the CrossFit space and following some of the elite athletes and seeing some of the comments, and some of the athletes have been really outspoken about resharing and posting some of the stuff that they get, which I think is great. I think it's great to make it known, like, hey, like it's not all like you're great, or like there is some real, for lack of a better word, idiots out there. And I think that I'm so glad that they bring it to light. But it's so shocking to me. Like for me, when I see those things, it's like these thoughts never, like they even cross my mind. Like it's just like I don't understand how these thoughts are even out there. And I feel like with the internet, we have these internet bullies, and I think it's just social being so prevalent, it's given rise to bullies who can bully without any repercussion, right? So I think that we're not just seeing it in that specific space,
Mm-hmm.
but in all spaces and everything. Like you're seeing, like even with like male professional athletes and leagues and female professional athletes, like you have a bad game and you get called out and you get like it's crazy. And it's just, but to keep it relevant to what we're kind of talking about today, and females in sport, and it's just like the direction of conversation in the comments section is never about what females are actually doing. It's more, it turns into aesthetic or sexual in nature, and it's like, to
Yeah.
me it's really shocking, and I really, I can't explain it. I don't know. Like it's yeah, it's mind-boggling for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, like, there's definitely, accounts that I follow that, they highlight some of the disparities in some of that misogynistic behavior. And it's really funny because those are the pages, like, if I was to start highlighting all of the shit that I've heard, either people slide into my DMs, this actually happens a lot.
Yeah, I
Slide,
was gonna say, like you're
people
gonna get a
slide,
lot more DMs than
yeah,
I am. Like,
slide into the DMs. I'll get private messages. Even when like, and countless other people get, you know, tenfold, hundredfold, and they'll report it. and like nothing happens. But like once you start to share your experience, you get flagged, you'll get shadow banned, your stuff will get taken down. And it's kind of like, so it's almost like you're not wanting me to share or any other person to share their actual experience.
Yeah.
Flag the hatred that they get and those types of things. But yet the people that are leaving the hatred comments or have pages that are actually dedicated to the vitriol, they're allowed, like that's not violating any guidelines.
It's
Right.
really weird.
And I mean, if we think about sort of more current events, so if I think about NCAA basketball, March Madness, it's one of the biggest collegiate tournaments of the year, probably the biggest collegiate tournament of the year. And there was a lot of dialogue going around of like, if you had seen some of the hate comments, they were just vile. Like some of it was just like, like the women don't even like lift, like, they just need yoga mats. I'm not joking. That was one of the comments. They just need yoga mats and they just need rollers. And like we don't have the space for it. And one of the players was just like, let me show you.
Yeah.
There was literally half a gymnasium full of squat racks, platforms, equipment for the men.
That was a massive space. Did you see that?
The side of that space was completely empty. There was nothing in it. There was like some chairs. There was nothing in it. And then they got like one set of dumbbells, which didn't even go, I think, past 30 pounds maybe.
No, I don't think it even hit that. It was like one of those like mini racks that like got to like 15.
I don't even think it hit 30 pounds, maybe like 20.
Maybe.
And so, and then if you look at just the disparity in coverage, swag, advertisement, and I work in high performance sport also, the argument has always been, well, there's more proportionate percentage wise, there's always more male athletes and female athletes. That is true. And the centering argument always comes back to, it's revenue driven, which I'm an accountant. I get that things are revenue driven. Like, I understand that. However, it is really hard to be able to compete at that level when you're not actually given the tools to succeed. How am I supposed to be playing at my very best, and be as physically ready as I can if I don't have the space and equipment to do so?
Even beyond the equipment, did you see the disparity and like the thing that like Sedona Prince, who's the athlete who actually shared the gym, she shared some other slides, and it was just the gym was one thing, the swag was another level, and you're just like, this is pathetic. Mm-hmm. The thing that like even took it over the top and like further for me was like, did you see the disparity in the food?
Yep.
Like we're talking about tools in terms of weights and things like that.
And like that's just ridiculous.
The boys, the males got they got a full on buffet, like tons of food. It looked fantastic.
Yeah.
And the girls got what looked like a TV dinner. And I was like looking at this and I'm like, you want to talk about revenue driven for swag or for the gym or whatever, you can make that argument. It's not valid, but make an argument, sure. But like food, like, are we separating food by gender? Like, are you kidding? Like, I don't know. I just like, that took it over the top for me. I was just like, this is unbelievable. Like you handcuff these athletes by not giving them the tools, like you said, but then food too. And then you expect them to perform at a high level. And then if they don't, it's like, well, there's no like, hey, we didn't give them tools. Like, oh, well, whatever. Like, well, like, how are you setting them up for success? Like,
you're not really. And I mean, I've experienced this on tour with rugby before. And we've learned on tour, especially if we tour nationally and there's a women's and a men's side, that the women go first to eat. That is what I've learned on tour. Because if you don't do that, you actually run out. because the boys and the men, they're naturally bigger, so they naturally consume a higher caloric count. It's just a fact. And it's not that our catering staff, doesn't anticipate for that. But I think sometimes the boys just don't understand that, like, if you've got a smaller athlete, they're maybe not going to need as much. So just let them go first, so they actually have the opportunity to get the fuel that they need.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a couple of the guys that made a stink about it when I was on tour in 2017. They made a bit of a stink about it. And because I'm not physically a very big person, they just kind of assumed I was one of the athletes. And I looked at them just like, no, dude, I'm one of your head coaches. You come and grab the stuff when your team is allotted to grab that. You don't get to go into other programs' like boxes. If you need more things, you let me know, and I will either let your team manager know or let your head coach know that you guys need more stuff. But you don't get to sift around, like in my program's stuff, because you perceive that you need more. Like, that's not how it works. He was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm just like, who is your team manager? Like, I will go talk to him afterwards. But it was one of those where it's like, if I hadn't said anything, the sneaky little hands would have like been in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's like, I'm working sometimes with athletes that are under 18, under 16, under 21. So they're a bit younger, and they're sort of in that time frame of, formative thinking. They're starting to discover what their identities are. Their outside influences are starting to really shape like how they're going to be as adults. And I think as coaches, and I sat in a seminar yesterday about sort of team building and things like that. But one of the biggest jobs that we have is to help shape them to be better human beings at the end of the day. It's not just, the sport that they're in. Yes, we happen to be coaching an athlete that is performing the sport, but they are a person. And we have the influence, and we have that relationship, right? And so if we can lead by example, and if we can teach them those values, what my hope is that they, take some of those learnings and hopefully apply it in other areas of their life. And I've worked with boys, and I've worked with men's rugby programs. And I can tell you that it is probably one of the most challenging pieces of coaching that I've ever done. Part of that is because I'm physically a lot smaller than them. So they're just like, I don't mean to be like looking down at you. I'm like, you're 6'2", I'm 5'2". Naturally, this is going to happen. Like, I don't take it personally, and so part of that is like, they're just like, oh, what does this small woman like know? So you really have to work. You have to work really hard to prove and to show that, like, yes, like I can make you better. I care about your development, and I care about the example that I'm setting for you, and I care about the man that you're going to become. Not who you are right now, but like, how am I going to help to shape how you are going to be later on, so that hopefully you're not on the other end of spitting out misogynistic vitriol to people that you don't know.
Yeah, and I think that you hit that like right on nail in the coffin. Like, it's a formative time, and we're in a space where you have that influence. And I think that it's a lot of language that's used, and it's really important. It's like, I think that referring to whoever you're coaching as an athlete, it doesn't matter if they're male or female.
Yeah,
you're both athletes. Like, I think that, like, you hear all the time in the gym. It's like, oh, like, yeah, well, Sarah did this, but it's good for a girl. And it's just like, no, it's good. It's good for an athlete. It's good for an athlete. And I think even if you look at the barbells, like the male bar or the female bar, and that's always what it's referred to. And I was like, why is it even referred to that? I know a lot of males that use the female bar, and I know a lot of females that use the male bar, and it doesn't really matter. Like,
it's not the weight, really. It's the diameter, right? Like, I got small hands.
Yeah, and I do too. And when I'm snatching, I actually prefer the thinner bar. Like, so it's just funny. Like, why do you get into a space and it's just like all of a sudden it's already labeled that way, right? And it's just like, I work out with females that I will never be as strong as, like,
And
ever.
it's so admirable because there's a lot of women that will come into this space, and you gotta have a degree of thickness in your skin, because you do hear a lot of vitriol, and sometimes people will just say it to your face. I have had things said to my face before, and I'm just like,
Oh God.
I'm like, wow, you got some cojones, my friend, to like actually like verbalize that to my face in front of other people. It's not even just like oh, let me pull you aside and say something gross. I'm gonna say it to you in front of like all these other people, and maybe they'll hear or maybe they won't. But it's like you got some gall to say that out loud. There's a lot of people that won't say it to your face, but they'll definitely let you know. Like if you're on social media at all, whether you have 5 followers, whether you have 5,000 followers, whether you have 1,000,000 followers, doesn't matter. People are gonna, you might get discovered, or you share something and people look, and you get the DMs. Like my Olympic lifting coach was just, I'm gonna be cleaning later today, and he was just like, you need to be more aggressive on your third pull with your elbows. And I was just like, okay. So he sent me some examples that he's like, channel the shitty comments that you get, because he's like, you get a lot of them. He's like, channel that shitty, like that shitty energy, and just be aggressive. That bar is those shitty comments. Like, you treat it aggressive.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. Because sometimes like he'll look at my Instagram stories. He's like, that fool actually said that to you. I'm like, I'm not always as vocal about the things that I get, but I think that I have to be, because there are younger athletes that do follow me. There's younger athletes that I've worked with, both male and female, that follow me. Mm-hmm. And I want them to know that it's like, this is not okay. 37-year-old me has thick enough skin, and I have enough support with folks around me that I can appropriately deal with some of these things. It's not to say that it doesn't always get to me, but if I was 16 or 17, I think that would be different.
For sure. How could it, like, especially if you're in a new space and in a new sport, like, it can't not affect you. And it might deter you, right? And that's the last thing you want, is losing athletes.
Yeah.
Or losing someone doing something that, hey, they don't need to be an elite athlete to be able to do the sport, but it could be something that provides them with immense physical and or mental benefit. And it's just like, to have them discouraged to do that, like, just it's really sad to see, for sure. And I think that by sharing, and I think that hopefully with like the sharing can lead to like changing of perception or changing of language, and I think that should hopefully help. Like, I'm optimistic. I can't not be. I think as a new dad of a girl, and you see some of these comments and you see some of these things, and you're just like, you're hopeful that, like, as a dad, your perception and your views can't not change. And I candidly couldn't say if my views on these things were different before. Like, I don't remember life pre-baby. But I can say post-baby, like, it's something that I definitely look at very closely. But I'm optimistic, and I think, with a lot of the social movements we've had over the last year, not necessarily relating to gender, but race and people of color, and I'm hopeful that seeing how vocal people were with this NCAA situation, and one coach actually came out and said thank you to NCAA. She's like, thank you so much for making this so visible for everyone to see. Because this is not the first time this has happened, right? She's like, this has been going on for years, but now everyone knows, right? NCAA apparently made a statement about being super inclusive and forward and progressive and all this. And then that's what their follow-up action was. And it's like, she called them out. She's like, this is fantastic. Thank you so much for making this so visible for the world. Because now, like, hopefully this lays forward to a precedent, like standard, that it doesn't matter gender, athlete is athlete, swag should be the same, accessibility should be the same, tools should be the same, food should be the same, right? And I think the fact that it became so viral and so out there, I think that's what it's gonna lay out to. Like NCAA can't not make things standardized now. Like they don't have the ability to not. So if they want to or they don't want to, they don't really have a choice now, right?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think there was a basketball player from like back in the 70s or 80s, I think. And he was kind of like, it's interesting to see that nothing from when I was playing till now.
That's it was probably worse.
A 30-year time period, and nothing has changed. Like, I can tell you just from working in the athletic space, being an athlete at that time, I retired from rugby when I was 33, partially due to injury. But I had started playing when I was 9 years old. And so my playing career was really long. I've been coaching now for almost 12 years. And it's been a journey that has had a lot of ups and downs. It's been turbulent in certain aspects. There's definitely been times that I've wanted to give up and I've wanted to walk away, because some of those, it's hard to fight for diversity, inclusion, and things like that when there's so much misogyny and microaggressive racism, favoritism, sexism. There's so much of it that your voice gets drowned out. And I mean, I'm hopeful to be speaking in a conference later in July about some of my experience. It's for women in sport.
That's awesome. That's exciting.
But part of it is, again, the aim is to hopefully share experience so that it starts to set that precedent, where it's kind of like, these are things that are just not acceptable. Like, we're not setting our athletes up to be successful if we can't give them what they need. And that goes from everything. That goes from medical care, access to physio, access to adequate food and nutrition, adequate strength and conditioning, adequate space to actually move around in and recover. And then, and then exposure as well, right? It's it's wildly different. And some of the coaches that I've worked with in the past that now work in women's rugby are just like, wow, my eyeballs have been kind of opened to what the differences are. And I said, I don't tell you this because I'm a man-hating feminist. I am far from it. I have always fought for equality. And it doesn't matter, what meat suit you're walking around in. Yeah. I think that we all deserve equal treatment and equal opportunities for things. And it shouldn't really be segregated in that way, but one of the things that I kind of want to gather a bit more your thoughts on, I know you've got a daughter, and obviously there's going to be certain things that, that are going to be a lot more sort of heightened for you because you'll be seeing the experience through her, essentially. Mm-hmm. But if you had a son, because I think this is also really important, if you had a son, what are, I guess where I'm trying to go with this is, a lot of our sort of culture, society, it dictates that, you need to teach your daughters how to be. Like, I have always been taught since I was very young that, I text my friends when I get home. Mm-hmm. I can't just go for a run when after work when the sun's starting to go down, because I actually have to think about the route that I'm going, whether it's lit. Yeah. Is there a lot of people out? Hey, my route's maybe 5 to 6K. That should take me about half an hour to maybe 40 minutes. Hey, dude, if you don't hear from me in an hour, please check in. I have to worry about those types of things. Boys are not really taught that, but I think it's important that they are taught, what consent is, respectful behavior. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if there are things that you think about as a parent now, like obviously you have a daughter, but things that you think about as a parent now where you're just like, yes, like these are important things in those formative years for them to be learning.
Totally. And I think that like, had I had a boy, I'm sure it would be slightly different, but I think the morals and the things you teach them wouldn't. It's not impacted by that. And I think also we're both people of color, right? So I think that even for males and boys, and um it doesn't change. Like,
Yeah.
it's a crazy, and it's a crazy extreme example, but Trayvon Martin went to
Yeah.
the went to the corner store to get like a pack of Skittles, like, or whatever he was getting. But so it's like we have gender as one problem, but then the racism is a whole other issue. So I think that boy or girl, like, these things are important to teach them. And I think that, yeah, I mean, raising a girl is going to be interesting for sure. It's the biggest blessing in the entire world. I can truly say that. Um, but yeah, that it's going to be a really tough one when we get to that age. But I think that, yeah, to teach, those keywords like you said, and like the consent and the safety and all these things is just, yeah, you got to be able to teach both genders that, and you got to enlighten. And I think the thing that you have to do is you have to enlighten from the other side. You have to be able to teach females or girls, you have to teach them why you're teaching them that and what the boy perspective is. Because scientifically speaking, boys and females are different, and our society is shaped in that capacity. And also for boys, it's teaching them the other perspective and why those things are crucial, and consent and respect and that moral compass. And I think those, like, showing them the opposite side can help enlighten them and why you're teaching them that. And then I think that your language and how you are with those, so like how you treat the opposite gender, and how you are when you speak to your significant other or other females in general, like, and you have to be really mindful. And it's funny, it's not just, oh, when they're 5, 6 or 7, or these kids are perceptive and they are smart and they are watching you from day one.
You're exactly right. Like they are watching you from day one. Like they pick
That's
up
all they're doing.
language cues, all those silent cues,
Yep.
body language. They can really pick up on a lot of that stuff like very, very, very early on, and it helps to shape before they sort of can verbalize and understand what that means. It really
Yep.
does shape sort of their perception of what's happening. And I think it's I think it's really interesting. Like when I worked with the junior boys program for rugby, it was really important for me to sort of highlight to them that like I am your coach. That is it. Like there should not be a difference in how you view me because I'm not male.
Yeah.
I'm here because I'm qualified, and I'm here because I believe in the program. I believe in you guys, and I believe that together, like we can build something really great. But I don't want them to be limited to that. The normal narrative for women is most of our coaches happen to be male. Most of the coaches that I've ever had have been male, and some of them have been really great. Some of them have been incredibly abusive and horrible people, but I would say majority of them that I've had have been male. Whereas for male athletes, their normal narrative is to have male coaches. It's not as common to have female coaches. And so I really wanted to make sure that if I was working with these kids when they were 14, 15, 16, in those sort of, formative years where they are understanding a lot more of sort of what's happening, that as they grow into men, they don't see the disparity, or they don't recognize the disparity as much. And I, some of the male athletes that I've worked with before, have kind of privately DM'd me and said that I was one of the best coaches that they ever had. And it's because I was very, very neutral about stuff, where it's like, I don't play favorites. I don't like to. It's not how I operate.
But coaching isn't gender based, right? And I think that's what we have to look at. Like, I think that you can be a good coach because you're a good coach.
Exactly.
You can be a shitty coach, and it has nothing to do with being male or female.
Exactly. It should have nothing to do with that.
And if you look at, sorry to segue, but it's like if you look at the NBA and the Spurs have a assistant coach that's female, and I can't remember her name, maybe Becky Hammond. And they asked Greg Popovich, who's the head coach of the Spurs and one of the best coaches of all time in all sports, you know, and they're like, oh, like he got kicked out of a game. She coached in lieu of Popovich, and they asked him, she made history by being a female and blah, blah, blah. And what do you think of it? And he's just like, we didn't hire her because she was female.
Yeah.
He's like, we hired her because she's a good coach. Exactly. And it was such a strong statement. Like he kind of nipped it in the butt. Like the media was definitely trying to get him to make a statement about how cool it was that a female coached an NBA game. And he's like, it doesn't matter. He's like, she coached an NBA game because she's a great coach. And that's why we hired her. And it was so cool to see him kind of nip the narrative in the butt. And I think that's what we have to do is we have to stop qualifying. We always qualify. This was good because of this. This was good because of this. It's like, no, it was just good. Why can't we just leave it at
it's just good?
You did great today. Cool.
You know, if I'm working with a coach, it's because they're good.
Yeah.
I'll find them, they're good, and I want to work with them. Athletes work with me. Hopefully, it's because they want to work with me because I'm good at it, not because of any perception that might come along with that, right?
Yeah, and like you look at sport early on, like in like my daughter, COVID has obviously limited the rec options, but we finally got her into swimming. We've got her into soccer. Actually, first class is this Sunday. I'm super stoked to like see her play sports and in her little uniform. But it's like everything at that age is unisex. There's no like boys in one class, girls in the other. Everyone's together, and so all her exposure to everything, like her school, her soccer, her swimming, you know, any other sport that she hopefully will play is like, there's no boys and girls. It's just everyone together. And it's just like, I really hope that inclusivity of gender like resonates and continues to perpetuate as she gets older, like to have not that divide. And like, you know, so I'm really happy that at that age, she's seeing that. Mm-hmm. And I just hope that theme and that trend continues.
Me as well. I'm just mindful of our time here. Just to make sure that we don't get cut off in the middle of the conversation.
So do you want to kind of let everyone know that we're going to do this in a few parts and kind of what's next?
You know, so for those listening out there, this is going to be a 2 to 3 part series because Al and I could probably unpack a lot of these things forever because there's literally just so much depth here, you know, but I really do appreciate this first part. We're going to dive into our second part. We're going to, I think the focus for that will be the continuation of this conversation about gender. Mm-hmm. And sort of, you touched on it a little bit before, and I do want to sort of unpack this a little bit more. You and I, for those of you watching will probably know, but if you're just listening to us, we're not white. Shock. You know, Al and I are of racial minorities. We're not from the same racial minority, but we are from more marginalized groups. So that has also impacted, you know, how we move around in the athletic space, both mm-hmm. as athletes.
Totally.
You know, and so for part 2, we are going to continue with sort of the look at gender within sort of the coaching space, something that I definitely want to talk to you a little bit more about.
Yeah. Awesome.
And then also unpacking race in our next episode. I think that'll be really good. I do this at the end of every episode. If the people out there want to know more about you, where can they find you?
So my Instagram is @flashmawji, and I work and live and breathe out of the Driftwood Athletics space. It is very near and dear to my heart. So @Driftwood Athletics is the Instagram that you can follow the gym that I'm a part of.
Awesome. And if y'all were ever curious about me, THY_AN is my personal Instagram account. I'm based here in Toronto now, and I'm back with the Academy Alliance Olympic lifting with the Bob crew out there. And I also work within rugby. I'm the interim head coach for McMaster University currently, and I'm still on the docket for the national program. So, Al, this has been a super enlightening conversation this morning.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this collaboration. We'll be recording a part 2 very soon. Again, we'll sort of dive back into gender and race, which I'm really excited about. And then for part 3, we'll just continue on with this chat. And I'm always open to future collaborations. As soon as COVID allows me to come to Vancouver, I'll be back out there. We'll get a WOD. We'll get a WOD in.
Workout in podcast.
Oh, 100%.
With coffee.
Enjoy the rest of your coffee. I will do the same. I'm gonna go crush my lifting session now. Channel some of that aggressive energy.
Love it.
And I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Thanks, Al.
Bye, Ann.